Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to create a loop section for a part of our service. So for this example, we'll have Glorious Day into a welcome. And for that welcome, I want the band to loop the intro of I Can't Believe while Chad talks. So I'm not going to lie, creating loops, oops, clicked the wrong button. Not going to lie, creating loops, it's one of the more advanced techniques that we'll cover. So hopefully I'll explain it well, and just watching and seeing it will be helpful for you. Alright, so here we have the intro, and it just plays the whole way through, but I want to loop it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to listen and find a good loop point. Make sure that musically it's going to sound okay to loop it over and over and over.
Intro, 2, 3, 4. Verse.
Okay, so you'll see that I split this intro region into two halves. The reason is I don't want to loop this whole thing over and over and over, because in the later half, loud isn't necessarily the right word, but it's the intro is in full swing, it's in full effect. Here, whenever the song starts,
4.
it sounds a little bit quieter to me. There's this fade in.
2, 3, 4.
And so if we were to always go back and loop that fade in, it just wouldn't sound natural. So instead, I'm just going to loop this half of the intro. It's the same chord progression. I'm just going to loop this half over and over and over. Alright, so what we want to do is we need to duplicate this portion of the arrangement. So what I'm going to do is I have our song track expanded down, and I'm going to shift, I'm sorry, not shift, I'm going to click and drag and highlight this whole portion, this intro loop. And notice that it goes all the way down into this master track. You want to make sure that your highlight selection goes all the way down there. The other thing you're going to want to make sure is that your multi-tracks are warped, and I know for sure that mine are. So once you have your highlight section, I'm going to copy this with Command C, and I'm going to click here on measure 131. I'm going to press, this is important, Shift Command V. So what Shift does is it's a time command, so I'm going to undo what I just did. If I were to come here and just press Command V and paste it, well, it would just paste it over the verse. I know it's kind of hard to tell, but it actually just like writes over the verse, and that's not what we want. We want a Shift Command V, and so what that does is it actually it wedges this highlight portion in between our first intro and our verse. That way it's not cutting out a section of our verse. Alright, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to listen to this and see what it sounds like. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Normally, a very common thing to have to do is, and I'm also, for this example, I'm going to color this a different one. That way we can kind of have some differentiation between what we're working with. A lot of times, whenever you paste a loop section like this, it's very common to have to drag your previous selection tracks into your new loop. But in this case, it actually works out that either way sounds good. Alright, and then believe it or not, we actually need one more of these sections. So I'm going to highlight, same thing, according to our markers clip, this intro loop. I'm going to copy that with Command C. I'm going to come here to the end of this intro loop. Make sure hold down Shift Command V and paste that. And then I'm just going to color these all different. That way we can kind of see what we're working with. Okay, so now what actually does the looping is it's part of our template. I'm going to scroll back to earlier in our set. There's all these flags that come in default with the template that we have. And they're called repeats. The reason I don't call them loops is loop is a very common like audio term. Like with multi-tracks, it's very common to see like percussion track and or loop track. Loop is it's a very generic word, so I prefer the term repeat. There's not much else out there that uses the term repeat. And so what we have is we have a repeat flag, we have a repeat clip, and we have a repeat track. And so you'll see that there are 6 sets of each, and you'll notice that they're paired with each other. Repeat.1, all the way through repeat.6 and repeat.6, and they all show up on a repeat track. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this repeat flag, and while I'm dragging this, you can zoom out. That way you can scroll a little bit quicker. And I'm going to zoom back in. I'm going to put this repeat flag here at the beginning of our intro loop. While I'm thinking about it, I don't want this to say loop. Okay, so I have repeat 1 here at the beginning of the section we want to loop. Now I need to go back and get the repeat clip. Same thing, while I'm dragging, I'm going to zoom out. That way I can scroll quicker. Oops. And then zoom back in. Okay, so now you'll see that this repeat clip is grayed out. It's actually disabled. And so how we go around that is you select it and then hit 0. And that will enable this clip. Alright, so let's listen to it, see what it sounds like. The other thing you're going to want is on your repeat track, make sure that the output is set to, in my case, it's IAC repeat. You're just going to want to make sure that it's routed to your repeat IAC bus. Okay, so as you see, whenever Ableton plays through and it hits this MIDI note, it actually is triggered to cue back to repeat number 1. Okay. And so you'll see, like, if I go back to this MIDI clip and disable it, and then I play through it, that's what it does. It goes straight through. It doesn't happen. We don't want that. We want to make sure it's turned on. Make sure and hit 0. Alright, so we're good to go there. Now what I do want is, the reason that we have several different sections going on is because I want them to kind of say different things at different times. Whenever we go back, like for example, maybe depending on how you copied and pasted your original intro, it's very common for it to say intro 2 3 4, intro 2 3 4 every time that you loop back, and we don't want that. So since they're all individual, pretend that this is the intro 2 3 4. In my case, I don't have this problem, but you can delete that if you want. And what I do want is I want a 2-measure count to verse 1. So what I'm going to do, so like here's our loop section in green, but then whenever it's time to get out of that to go to verse 1, I want the guide track to actually say 1, 2, intro, or verse 2, 3, 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this 1, 2 count here at the beginning of I Can't Believe, and I'm going to press Command C, and then I'm actually going to paste it right here at the beginning with just Command V. So now it will play
1, 2, verse 2, 3.
Okay, and so the last thing we need to do is we need to assign loop to miss flags to our into our Ableton set.